Hi, everyone. Welcome to this coaching salon about ethical, soulful marketing that works with my special guest, Mark Silver, who is the author of the great new book that I've already posted, noted the crap out of, Heart-Centered Business. Definitely going to want to get this. And what I wanted to do here before we even really get started is I would like to just take a moment of silence for gestures around everything, for the people that are suffering, for the people that have died, for the loved ones, and really for all beings. So let's just take a moment here while people arrive and just take a moment to reflect in your way and send love, good energy, whatever's meaningful to you. Thank you. Okay. So with that, let's get into it. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Bridgette Boudreau. I'm a master certified coach. I help people with what's next in life, whether that be their solopreneurial effort or leaving the corporate world or the next phase of life beyond career, raising the kids, all the responsibility stuff. That's where I specialize. And I also, before I was a coach, I was a digital marketer. And so I am very passionate about marketing. And also, when you are marketing yourself, it is incredibly challenging. It's different than having a multi-million dollar budget where you're buying ads and putting out emails and seeing how they're doing. It's just a completely different thing when it becomes personal. And so I've had my share of challenges, and one of the people's work that has really helped me through those challenges is Mark Silver. And so Mark has agreed to join me here today for this salon. And since 1999, Mark, who is a master of divination, is that it?
It's a Masters of Divinity, an MDiv. Yeah.
MDiv, Masters of Divinity.
Yeah.
And Mark has worked with heart-centered entrepreneurs to help them realize that every act of business can be an act of love. Mark is one of the pioneers in integrating real spirituality with the nitty-gritty of small business. He founded Heart of Business in 2001 and is a designated master teacher within his Sufi lineage. He has received his Master's of Divinity, and as a coach, teacher, and spiritual healer, he has facilitated thousands of individual sessions with entrepreneurs and has led hundreds of classes, seminars, groups, and retreats. His weekly writings and teachings are followed by thousands of people around the globe. As a fourth generation entrepreneur, prior to Heart of Business, Mark ran a distribution business, turned around a struggling nonprofit magazine, and worked as a paramedic in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, Mark, thanks for joining. And I want to, oops, let's see. Oh, love that mute button. All right. So, just quickly, what we're going to cover today is I wanted to chat with Mark and just start off by dispelling some marketing myths. Um, and as I was saying, please feel free to use the chat. I can actually monitor the chat since Mark will be talking part of the time. So, we're going to hit on some marketing myths. And then I wanted Mark to lead us through one of his exercises that I think can really help you shake things loose, because we both believe that marketing in this more heart-centered way requires both inner and outer work. And this is just a little microcosm piece that'll help you see how those bits work together. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A, helping people through challenges, because I personally always like it best when the teaching is revealed through the conversation, right? And I'm so grateful that you all have joined here today, because this is my passion, having these conversations and helping you move forward. So, Mark, let's get into it. So
Yeah.
as you know, I went all through your book. And so the first thing that I wanted to ask you about is at the beginning of your book is this quote. While marketing is not the only thing a business needs, it is consistently the most challenging part of making a micro business work. We have a long history at Heart of Business of helping people who come in hating marketing learn to love it because they learn that marketing is something very different from what they thought. So tell us a little bit about what is the difference from what people think.
Yeah. Thank you for all of that. And Man Rahim, let me just say that just really grateful to be with you all. And I don't know if you all have had the opportunity to have somebody else read your bio in front of you. It's always a kind of a, who is that guy? Anyway, so yeah, marketing, it's so interesting. A lot of people, so first of all, marketing has been done so dysfunctionally. Like I start the whole book out by saying that if you have issues around business, I don't want you to get over your issues with business. Like there's wisdom with the issues that you have because business has been done terribly. It's like there's been commerce and trade for as long as human beings have been around in various forms. But this capitalistic white supremacist nonsense that's been in place the last few hundred years has just gotten worse and worse. And we don't have a lot of models of how to be both effective because our businesses have to work despite the economy that we're in, but also heart-centered. And so one of the things that there's an understanding or an insight that we need to understand. And it's something that came early in my career before some of the other pieces dropped in, but there the length of time it takes someone to make a significant purchasing decision is usually vastly underestimated. And the thought that we can have like either a single phrase or a sales process or marketing that takes someone from complete stranger or relatively new contact into someone who's like buying from you is just it's uh it's false if it's done from the heart. And the only way that it does happen rapidly, well, there's two ways that it happens rapidly. One is using manipulative, unethical, terrible forms of marketing and sales that we're all unfortunately familiar with in our culture around us. The other way it happens is when someone actually has been prepared over time through repeated contacts with maybe other businesses or other things, and then they run into your business and it's just the right timing, and then they're ready to jump in. But it wasn't necessarily the power of your marketing that moved them from not interested at all to like, here, take my credit card. And so when we take the burden off of trying to sell someone immediately, first of all, I mean, my heart relaxes, my whole being relaxes, and a lot of us can just go, okay, let's let's just slow down here. And believe me, I understand the urgency of making our businesses work. You got to get paid. But if we it's just reality, it's just reality. And I have a whole developmental model of business that of how businesses develop through stages that I've observed over decades at this point. And it takes probably 3 to 4 years on average, maybe 5 years to go from complete startup all the way into what I call momentum, where the business is dependable and it's making enough and it's kind of easy and fun. There's rewards along the way, you're making money along the way, but that sense of solidity just takes some time to get to. So, with that as an underpinning, the when we understand that the true purpose of marketing is not attraction, it's not trying to force someone to buy, you're not trying to pull people in. Like attraction is like being pulled in, right? Gravity or love. It's like that's the province of the heart. Like when you try to manufacture love or attraction is when it starts to feel gross. We have to have genuine love and care in our hearts. But what people need, especially in this kind of a dysfunctional culture, is a sense of safety. And so that's what I want to leave you with, understanding like at the core that marketing, when it's done from the heart, when it's done effectively, when it's done in a real way, its primary purpose is to create safety not to create attraction.
You just said a mouthful there, Mark.
I know it's a
And
whole download.
I
It's a whole
think,
download.
I mean, I want to go back and kind of underscore some of these things because I feel like you were talking and I've fallen into every one of those pitfalls, but it's like that thing about thinking you just need to say the right message. If I say it just right, I mean, I spent well, I was going to say year, but who am I kidding? 53 years basically on trying to just say it just right. And that's a place where you can just get really stuck and just reminding me that marketing is about relationship. And then you have I'm not going to have the language quite, is it your three paths of marketing,
Yeah, the three journeys of marketing.
the three journeys of marketing, which
Right.
so what I was doing, and I think this is another pitfall, is I had gotten into that cycle of just throwing out offers. Okay, well, that offer didn't work. Not
Hmm.
being mindful that it's taking 3 to 5 years. And that's been my experience in this last iteration of my business, is that it's taken a lot of time. But I had fallen into that. I'm going to get the message right. I've just got this one shot at it. I need to convert cold people into buyers. And so just being reminded about the three journeys of marketing really
Hmm.
created a lot more space. And that if I'm throwing offers at people, I'm basically trying to jump into bed together before we've even had coffee. And so
Right.
I
Right.
think
Right.
you wouldn't do that. I mean, some people do that, like you said, like sometimes that happens, right? But usually there's a process involved. So tell us a little bit about these three journeys of marketing.
Yeah, yeah. And I keep looking down because my dog is curled up at my feet. And so I keep looking at her. So if in case you're
Mine
wondering what
is
the
over
heck is he looking
here.
at? Yeah, she's lying in the spot of sun coming through. But you're not a cat. It's okay. So I don't know where the cat is. Anyway, so the thing, so so the three journeys of marketing. So what happens is that when we think that marketing is just one thing, then we've lost sight of the fact that we have different kinds of relationships and different stages that relationships move through, right? And so I broke it down into three journeys. And so the first journey of marketing is connecting with new people. It's like making your business visible to new people. And the intention of that is to help people just move into the second journey. And the second journey is when we have ongoing contact with someone that hopefully in a sustainable way, different ways in different businesses. A lot of the ways that we've seen are like, like a newsletter, regular content is one, common way to do that. And what that does is it just deepens the relationship and hopefully to the point where their timing arrives if your business is relevant and then they can step into the sale. And then the third journey of marketing is referral marketing. It's the referral marketing needs certain kinds of support and education, but it's when the people who are your raving fans, who are your colleagues, who are your larger network, send people into your first and second journey. And when you have these three in place, you're doing things that put you in front of new people. Right now, this is first journey marketing for me. You all, most of you probably don't know me. I'm not that famous. Then if people are interested enough and they end up on our newsletter list or social media following or whatever, then you can be in the second journey. You can just hang out, and see like, is this guy really consistent? Does he really walk his talk? Is there, like the things that Heart of Business is offering, are they even relevant to me? You know, and it's probably not going to come for a while because you're in really good hands with Bridgette. You don't need my services right now. And so that's just takes time. And then at some point, maybe the right people will refer. And then you get this cycle where new people become part of an audience that then some of whom will refer people and then it grows and grows and you keep doing these different pieces instead of just trying to treat everyone as if they're in the same stage of relationship with you. And it's not good. And so you can then think about your marketing saying, oh, do I have all three journeys in place? Some oftentimes people will have one particular part of it in place because, they think that's what you should do or they've seen other people do it. But because it's not complete, they'll think their marketing isn't working. But in fact, I think about it in terms of like a bridge. Like let's say you have three sections of a bridge, one on either side of the shore, and the middle part. If you have the middle part, you might think, God, my marketing's terrible. I better keep working on that middle part without realizing there's just pieces missing. It's incomplete. Now, most businesses, because they haven't conceived of their marketing in a way similar to this, they don't have a way to care for people and have that cycle going. And so the majority of their customers, usually not nearly enough to keep the business, make the business really vibrant, are the people who walk in spontaneously, who as soon as they show up, they go, oh my God, I want to work with you. There's that kismet, there's that attraction and that connection, and the timing's right, and they've been prepared in other ways, like we were just talking about. And so people often live in the myth that that's how it's supposed to happen. That, oh, people spontaneously become your customer just like that. However, in a business that's in momentum, that's really robust, you'll have a very small percentage of the people who buy who are in that category of just met you and they'll jump in. And the majority of the people that really make your business thrive will be people who go through this kind of a relationship deepening cycle with you until the timing is right for them.
And just as you were talking, Mark, it occurred to me that, I think so many people that are, you know, spiritual, more soulful, more heart centered, whatever you want to call it, they have this deep hunger to trust the process, but they don't know what process to trust. And so that's what I really liked about your clarity in terms of, it's this piece, and this piece. And it's not some magic beans formula. You have to infuse all of that with your personality and your heart and your way,
Right.
and making those authentic connections in your way. But you have this kind of framing, at least for me, it helped me to trust, like, okay, I'm going to stop flinging offers out there. I needed to work on a little bit more of that first part of the journey, and a little bit more on the third part of the journey with the referrals, making sure, like, hey, am I making it easy for people to talk about me? But it allowed me to relax and say, okay, instead of doing another offer, I'm going to improve a couple pages on my website. I'm going to do some coaching salons and really commit to that. And so I just think, that
Mhm.
that framework that is flexible but clear, and it's not anything you have to pay a ridiculous amount of money for,
No,
you
no,
know?
it's relatively simple. It does need some consistency and there is a bit of an experimentation, there's finding your, like, how do you want to express yourself? There's pieces to it. But yes, if you have this kind of a structure, it's just something that you can lean into without feeling like it's all random or that you have to constantly make it up from scratch. And that's,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
blah.
it took me from just feeling like, well, I'm just flinging stuff against the wall. Like, I don't know. And the other thing that I talk a lot about in my work that I think really harmonizes with your work is part of, we both talk about commitment and devotion to your business. And I think the other thing that, one of my pitfalls is, I always kind of had one foot out the door, like, well, if this doesn't work. And I really had fallen into that success failure mindset. So if something didn't go the way I thought it should go, and oh, by the way, I have ridiculously high standards for myself. And so nothing ever
Right.
goes the way that I thought it should go. And every time I launch, I have a nervous breakdown, like, to varying degrees, right? I'm
Mm,
being dramatic, but
mm,
it's just like, you know, but that was all because everything was riding on that one thing.
right.
Everything, if I don't do this one thing right, I'm a failure, and then I'm gonna have to go back to corporate or something, my sad story that I had about what's gonna happen next.
Mm,
And so I had to take some of my own medicine and say, like, look, this is an experiment, and this is not an event, it's a process, and I have to devote myself to the path of my business. And if that means, along the way, I needed to do some things to just get, bump up my bank account or whatever, like you have to do that.
Yeah.
But to devote myself to this thing that I really wanted to create. And if I have that success failure mindset and I'm backing away every time something doesn't go the way I expected, which is pretty much none of the time, because of my lofty ambitions, it's like bring my ambitions down and be open, be creative, be in response to the information that's coming back to me. And that has really changed things around for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And so the other thing that really jumped out at me that you were talking about in the book, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, is this idea that people don't get need to get over their adverse reactions to marketing. So say a little bit more about that.
Yeah. You like everything. So from the perspective that I'm coming from a Sufi perspective, Sufi Islamic perspective, like everything comes from the divine. Everything comes from the source of love. And I don't mean some beard in the sky. I mean the oneness, from which none of us is separate. And so everything arises from that. And so if something arises, so if I'm upset about something, like that too is divine. Like there's going to be something there. However, this physical world, the way that we work with it, things can get distorted, right? And so it's not just about like pinging around with my reactions at the surface level, but it's like, okay, I'm having a reaction and I want to listen. Okay, there's something worth listening to here. When our body hurts, there's something worth listening to here. Like maybe I'm moving my body wrong. Maybe I got stung. Maybe who knows what's going on. I'm eating the wrong food. I don't know. There's something that needs care and attention. If I'm having a reaction to marketing or to business or something in particular that's going on in my business, I want to listen to that. I want to pay attention. I want to brush it over. I remember somebody years ago, I remember somebody saying, fear is false, experiences appearing real. And I'm like, what, we're just supposed to ignore what arises in us? Like that never struck me as something I wanted to work with. It's like fear is a message. Sometimes we have legitimate reasons for fear. Like, oh yeah, I got to keep the roof over my head. We've got kids. I got to keep food in the fridge. It's like there's, you know, eh, we don't want to be heedless. We don't want to like think that all negative reactions are somehow like just a personal failure to believe in or trust or love. It's like it's something real there. So yeah, so I don't want people to get over that. There's wisdom and we want to listen. And especially when we can look out in the world and see so much crap in the world of business, so much lack of ethics, lack of care, lack of accountability. And so we don't want to do that. And so we want to listen, but we want to listen deeply. We want to kind of go in, we want to lean in. Like one of the most important capacities I think we as humans can develop is the capacity to be with uncomfortable emotions without trying to soothe or fix. Now, this does not mean staying in a harmful situation. It does not mean staying in an abusive situation. It does not mean allowing yourself to be harmed or treated badly. I don't, like there's levels to this, right? But kind of run of the mill uncomfortable emotions, our culture hasn't really taught us, the mainstream culture hasn't really taught us how to be with difficult feelings, grief, fear, anger, sadness, like these different things. But if we can make space for them, then we can listen more deeply and we can figure it out what's exactly going on and what it is that's really being asked of us. Because what's being asked of us, if we have a business, is not to turn away from marketing completely, but to reject what isn't right, reject what isn't truthful, and to find the pathway through that our hearts can believe in, that we know that we can sleep at night, and is helping our businesses become visible to the people who need us.
Yeah. I I love that. And it's like you were saying, there's degrees of that too. And just to stay with all the degrees, because you might, see a super coach or somebody out there who's just agitating people so that they can turn them upside down and shake all their money out, right? And that's repellent, and that's pretty clear. And
Yeah.
then, but you might have somebody that you even like and respect, and they're sharing in a way, and something about that just hits you, and that's also a good thing to be with, because that just may be something that you personally want to do differently, or it sparks an idea in you. And so
Hmm.
it's
Right.
whether it's, big time, or you like something that somebody's doing and you want to figure out how to do that for yourself. Like, all of that is information, and just being told that it's your mindset and you need to do some worksheet to change your mindset to accept the unacceptable is not okay. And so
Yeah.
I love this idea of, and I agree, staying with your uncomfortable emotions without thinking you need to change your mind, or thinking that it's bad, or thinking that it's wrong, and just being really curious about what that message is. Yeah, it may be something in you that needs to shift, but it may be something that you need to shift, or you want to do differently. And you need to know that information. That is pointing you toward your best possible presentation of your business.
Hmm.
All right. So let's see. One more question, and then I want to do the exercise, and I want to get in. I want to have lots of time for Q&A. So y'all better start thinking about your Q&As, because we're co-creating here, right? But the one thing I do want to talk about is people's pain and weaponizing people's pain. And I think there's some nuance here. So there's been a lot of talk in online marketing circles about weaponizing people's pain, and we
Hmm.
can talk a little bit about what that is. But what I think has happened is that some good-hearted folks have overcorrected in reaction to that. And so
Hmm.
so what I see is a hesitancy to talk about what people are experiencing that might prompt them to hire a service provider. And so, can you share a little bit, Mark, about how to create a connection with people without twisting the knife in their pain?
Yeah. So in Sufism, in Islam, there's quotes that some of which that are attributed, considered to be attributed directly to God. So Hadith Qudsi. And so there's one that says, I was a hidden treasure and I yearned to be known. And so I created the creation in order to be known. And so there's this deep yearning that the source, that divine, the oneness had to be known. But how does the oneness know itself? And so from a Sufi point of view, that's why we exist, is to know the oneness. And we want to be known. So we have that spark in us too of wanting to be known. Like we all want to be witnessed. We all want to be seen, like how nourishing that is when somebody really sees you. And so weaponizing pain, of course, like a lot of marketing does, is about naming pain in such a way that re-traumatizes people so they become activated. And the only way to soothe that activation is to purchase. That's the setup. Like that's the manipulation. It's terrible. It's abusive. It's miserable. However, if you don't mention what people are struggling with, people don't feel seen in their struggle, then they're not going to feel seen. They're really not going to feel seen, or they're not going to feel cared for. They're not going to feel like it's safe with you. Or they might think, wow, that offer sounds nice. I'll get to it as soon as I deal with X, Y, or Z. And you've never articulated that you can actually help with X, Y, or Z. So the trick, if you will, is to see people as whole. You see them as whole. You don't see them as broken, and you see their struggle. And when you witness from that place, when you talk about it from that place, like, oh, so many people like struggle, like business can seem like a struggle, it can seem overwhelming, it can seem exhausting, you don't know where to turn. But so many people have done it. Like you can do it too. Like it doesn't take extraordinary skill. You have it within you. It's totally possible. And, it's good to get some help, but there's lots of places to get the help. And here's one place to get the help. And when you can do that, you can witness somebody in their struggle and they can relax and they know that they're being seen as whole and not broken. Their struggles are being acknowledged and witnessed. And you're not holding up your offer as the only thing that can help them, which would be a lie, right? Because there's always multiple paths forward. And when that happens, like again, it creates that safety and that connection.
Yeah, that was such to see that in your work. That was such a profound articulation of what I felt in my heart and what I wanted to be.
Mhm.
And then to follow that up with here's how you can create that is was everything for me. It was what I was hungry for that I didn't even know exactly what I was hungry for. So
Mhm.
there's the philosophy of that, and then there's how to actually manifest that in your work, in your communications. And I just think it's really powerful, and I love that idea that marketing is not attraction, it's creating safety and belonging. Even, like you can come here, and I don't know about you all, but as Mark was talking about that, I just felt a big exhale, like ah, and isn't that what we want to create with our people? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Like, and I believe if you hold that intention as you're writing, as you're making your videos, as you're sharing, that you can help create that in other people, that exhale that makes them say, oh, I found the help I needed. So thank you for that. With that, Mark, I think this is actually a pretty good segue. So I love your remembrance exercise, and I like in the book how you paired it with this piece about untangling one knot.
Right.
And yeah, so I'll let you take it from
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. This is one of the times when I wish I had done my homework because when I think about like if I lead this exercise on untangling one knot with you all, we probably won't have much time for Q&A. And not that it takes a long time, but it's like there's concepts and things to introduce. I think what might be a nice thing to do, Bridgette, just for the people that are here, is
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to type in because my book has QR codes and links, and I actually have an audio of leading people through this exercise and of untangling one knot. And so if you're willing to type in the URL from page 23 into the chat for folks, then
I
they can
sure
have
am.
access to that. And and I can just explain a little bit about what the exercise is and what the purpose is. You know, I believe as a healer, I believe that healing has to like come into the physical. That you don't want just a good feeling in the heart. You want something that actually comes through, into physical form. And when you're starting to work with your business, there can often be so many different places that there's emotional content or there's like entanglement or there's things that like feel hard or difficult to approach. It can feel like, oh my goodness, how am I going to heal everything? Like, how am I going to, like, do I have to heal perfectly to get there? To like, do I have to be enlightened? And what I've seen in the process of healing, and maybe some of you have experienced this also, is that you don't have to heal everything. You know, in particular, I like to back people out of trying to heal larger patterns, like approach, like, oh, I have an issue with money. Like, let's heal everything around money as one big healing. And it's like, oh my God, how do you do that? I like to see people go in to the details and say, okay, I have this one offer and I'm trying to price it. I was working with somebody in our own online community earlier today about this. It's like I'm trying to price it, but if I price it too high, will people even buy it? And if I price it too low, will I even be supported? And things of social justice and access, and it's just like this huge and so like that's one little example. And so using that as a place of healing, like doing this untangling one knot exercise with that one very specific example, instead of trying to like do the overall pattern, what that will do is that will like it loosens the knot. Like you go through this kind of a healing exercise, like, similar to what I'm offering you here. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. People have a lot of different ways of doing healing, and it loosens the knot. And you loosen one knot, you loosen another knot, you loosen another knot, and pretty soon the whole thing is starting to open up. But if you try to go for the larger pattern, healing, money, what that often does is it creates an intellectual, like you're intellectualizing what's going on, and it creates a distance from it. And so you're not in touch with the raw issues of what's going on. And so the healing can't really get to where it needs to go. You're healing the idea of money, but you're not actually changing anything in how, like, you're still going to struggle with, how do I price this thing? So yes, Victoria, exactly. So yeah, so I want to encourage you to, if you have something in particular, some small little thing in business that you're like, oh, use this exercise, and then use it repeatedly, and then see how that starts to slowly untangle the larger pieces. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, great. So y'all will have homework. I'll send that around in the replay. And yeah, let's get into, I really, I just think teaching is always richer when we're talking, again, when we're talking about specificity. So this is also great if you are a coach. This is a great thing to always be doing with your clients too, is you want to take it from the universal down to the local, right? Down to what's immediate and specific.
Mhm.
So, in that vein, I did have somebody email in with a question. So, I'm going to start there, and then that'll give you all a moment to think about what you would like to ask or just toss into the mix. Okay. So, this person says, I'm a health coach with an unpopular approach to body transformation. My story is I experienced weight release from an internal intention to be healthy and was blown away by the body's wisdom. My training was geared toward guiding others into understanding their bio individuality. My biggest challenge is delivering my message in a way that gets results.
Right. I'm so curious about what she found unpopular about that message, because it doesn't sound very unpopular to, at least in the
Yeah.
circles that I so there's some place that she's coming into it. So all right, here's one of the most fundamental places I feel people really trip up, is that so people say, so they ask, so what do you do? And then people often take that question literally in a certain way, and then try to answer it, often unconsciously, at the level as if the other person wants to become a practitioner also, and trying to detail and explain what they do. That's not what they're asking, and that's not what they really want. I don't believe that a business is defined by what you do, by the modality or the approach, or, your methodology. I believe that a business is defined by who you help and what problem you help them with. So, I do Sufi healing, and I do like weird, it's like chanting in Arabic or doing weird things, and as well as doing like very nitty-gritty business training. And this is how a sales conversation is structured, and there's all there's all these different pieces to it. But what we really do is we help people who are wanting to make a difference in the world, and they really need their business to work. They need to make a profit. That's our business. So when somebody says, what do you do? It's like, well, I've got a company, and we help people who want to make a difference in the world, and they're business, and they're self-employed. They have a small business, or they have a small business around it, and it really needs to work. They need to make a profit from it. And that's what we do. That's what we do. That's I don't and then if somebody has questions, of course I can explain it, and there's more about how to talk about what you do, but it's like, so that's one aspect. And another aspect is that, again, you don't want to be trying to explain the details of how you do something. You want to think about like what are the principles behind your work, because people can understand principles without having to understand the technical nitty gritty of how it works. It's like, so if I were to make complete guesses without really knowing this person's work, it's like, well, there's a principle that, everybody's body is unique. Like we have different, like there are different people have different kinds of metabolisms. Also, people have different ways that they were raised and different kinds of family upbringings. And so different emotional relationships to food and different kinds of food, and they have different things going on in their lives, and this all creates kind of like an individual template. And so you have to find your own kind of individual way of relating to food, and not just grab something off the shelf that worked for somebody else. You can make it very simple and in a way that makes it really obvious to people. You just like naming principles. It's like, and when somebody asks, oh, how does that work? I wrote a whole article about this because it's kind of funny. It's like, oh, how does it work? It works very well.
Thank
you know,
you.
yeah, you know, and I don't mean to try to avoid it or try to be coy or funny, too funny about it, but it's like they're not really asking for technical details about how it works. How does Sufi healing work? Well, it works really well, and I if somebody really wants to get into kind of technical, esoteric, spiritual healing discussion, I will go there. I will totally geek out on that. But it's not usually somebody who's struggling with their business. It's not usually really what they're asking. So I like to encourage people to listen to the question under the question. Like, what is it that they're really wanting to know, and answering that question instead of just answering the surface question in a way that bores them and disconnects the two of you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think too, like what jumped out at me was this line about an unpopular approach to body transformation. And so a couple things about that is there's a whole if this person is existing in a space where that is the feedback, or an ecosystem where that's the feedback, there are other ecosystems where people love this idea and are all about it. And if it's sometimes when we're new to coaching or putting ourselves out there, we're still developing our own belief in what we do and how it works. And so I would just offer, instead of unpopular, you might just start saying to yourself, this is unconventional. It certainly is different. It's not the conventional wisdom, but it is something that people do really want. They want to take care of their bodies in a more connected way. And I think if you can start looking at your work through the frame of like, yeah, it's not what the usual people are doing, but this is what I'm doing. This is what I believe in. This is what's helped me. And I believe it can help you too.
Right.
I
And
just
just
think
and
that's
just
a
to
better
sorry.
footing. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, well, I was just I was raised Jewish. We interrupt each other a
Oh,
lot.
no, go for it.
But and another tack to take on this, and my colleague Rebecca Van Dam, who does wonderful stuff around content marketing support. She and I did a webinar together, and she's fabulous. But she really leans into this idea of like, if you have an idea in your business that's controversial in some way, not to create controversy, not to create drama, but if you have something like that, like lean into that. Because one, it's how you work, and you want to have that up front because you don't want people in that won't like it. You don't want to hide that part. But just like you said, that people will be able to more easily self-select in or out. Like people will love it and they'll be so grateful to find it, and other people won't like it and they'll be glad to be able to easily avoid it. Like I am very explicitly spiritual in how I work, and people who, in all paths, all religions, all things, like and it's very open. But if someone is, full on atheist, I have colleagues I can refer you to, like no shade. That's, people have all the different ways that we walk in the world, but you are not going to enjoy how I work. And you should know that up front so that you don't spend money on something that you don't like. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, standing for who you are is really important because and not everybody's going to dig it, and that's great. That's what you want. You want to create that differentiation. All right, so who else has a challenge they'd like to throw into the mix or a question or
It doesn't have to be clear. It can be like a messy tangle. They're like, I don't even know what to do with this thing.
yes. Harry.
I've gone back and forth over the last few years, and I finally got tired of marketing structure and started getting playful. So I post on Instagram when I feel like it, when I'm inspired, when I see something on a walk, and then it dreams me into something to share or some words of wisdom. So I do a lot of that, but I'm not as much posting about my offers. So, and obviously you can't tell how much I'm doing what of, but is there a way for me to get a feeling of if I'm balanced or doing
Right.
enough? How would I know if I'm doing enough of my posting marketing stuff? Because we
Yeah.
know that how a lot of people do it is a little bit obsessive.
Right, right, right. And so it's, and I get it. You don't want to do it too much or too little. And then of course there's no hard and fast numbers. Do you invite people into, do you maintain an email list at all that you communicate with, or is it all purely social media?
I'm also an author, so I do a lot on Substack. I just
Mhm.
switched from doing MailChimp to Substack, so I'm kind of playing around with that as well.
Right.
And I have a Facebook group. I have a lot of things I invite people to do.
So something that we've seen consistently as pretty much as true now as it was 20 years ago, which is perhaps strange, but it's just true, is that the majority of selling seems to happen over email rather than on social media. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen on social media, but because of algorithms, not everybody sees all your posts. And the truth is that social media is just not as intimate a form of communication. Like when you send an email out, you're one-on-one with someone. It's a very intimate space, strangely, in a strange way. Whereas social media is like it's like being in this kind of a room, it's like there's everybody around. And so it's received differently. And I know that, people talk about, oh, there's too much email and people don't pay attention to email anymore. And it's true that people don't pay attention to irrelevant email. But there's a few newsletters I'm on and I read every one. And so I, and so what I might encourage you to experiment with, one, I love that you're being playful. I think that that's really important. That's being connected to a sense of aliveness around how you're communicating. Is that yeah, mentioning your offers. I don't know, 10% of the time, 1 out of 10 posts, maybe it's like bringing some awareness to it. More so in some times when like maybe you're near a deadline or whatever, obviously, and then less so other times. I would be inviting people to your email list from Instagram or wherever, and just,
Mhm.
there's different ways to do that, but it's just just I mean, I just encouraging people to like not depend on the social media algorithm for the connection, right? And so so anyway, so that's what I would do. And I would, the same way that you are, it sounds like consciously inviting in an awareness of things that you want to post about. It's like one of the filters. You're moving
Yeah.
through the world and you find something and you go, gosh, I'd really love to share this with people. And, I would invite you in a similar way to invite that same sense of aliveness with your offers so that you have a real sense of connection in your heart with your offers and with the people that are wanting your offers. And so, maybe you find something that you want to share, and instead of it just being a post, maybe it's connected to an offer. We're holding a virtual retreat Friday, November 3rd, and it's something that we're promoting now. And if I'm out in the woods with my dog, like it might just be a regular post, like I posted this morning picture of me and my dog and just saying, hey, good morning from the woods. But it could also be like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to spend some time in a virtual retreat? You can make these
Mhm.
connections. So I think a lot of what we don't do is hold an awareness of our business, like the heart of our business and what the needs of the business are and what the business itself wants to communicate. And if you're in communication in your heart with the heart of the business, it has a separate beingness, separate spiritual reality to it, then you can have that same sense of aliveness with it and communicating about it that you do with anything else in the world. So, and having, you know, 10 to 15% as a percentage, just as a kind of a way of auditing, just kind of because I get caught up in things. Heart of Business sits at kind of the juncture of social justice and spirituality and business development because capitalism sucks. And so I sometimes get really caught up in the world of social justice, and I'm like, oh, I should mention the business too because it exists. So I think making sure that's in your awareness is important. Does that help without
That
being a
helps
hard
a
and
lot.
fast
And I
recipe?
like your mention about pictures of your dog, because sometimes I do post just a picture and I don't write anything. And people, some of my friends will say, well, you're not doing much about your business. But I think the Instagram is a good interactive where sometimes I write a couple sentences, sometimes I put hashtags, but not always, because I
Mhm.
want people to follow it and say, oh, she's not pushing her business, she's showing me part of herself.
Right. And
That's the way it feels to me anyway.
right. Right. And I think that that's beautiful. And I would encourage you to play with pushing your business a little bit more because I find that those of us that are sensitive to not wanting to be pushy, at the point that you're feeling pushy, is just the point where people are going, I think I heard something coming from the other room. It's like we're
Yeah,
so far away from actually being pushy that we're not actually being present. And I want to encourage you to be present, and that if you can make a mistake, if it's okay to make a mistake in not being pushy enough, it's okay to maybe make a mistake with being too pushy and then apologize and back off, and I just want to encourage you to play with that.
that's exactly why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I felt like I wasn't pushing enough. So thank you so much for that. That
The
helps a
other
lot.
thing I want to underscore, Mark, that thanks, Terry. The other thing I wanted to underscore quickly, and then we all have to go to the next thing here, but is that idea of making the connections. So I just had a client the other day who was like, social media was going great and this thing was going great. And then as we were talking, I found out she's not sending any sales emails because she has a hesitation. And I was like, well, pew pew, my work here is done. Like, go forward and start sending sales emails. But it's like, think of it as closing the loop and making the connections, right? So you want to facilitate connection from your social media to your email list, from your on your site, from the about me page to the work with
Mhm.
me page, making sure that you're ushering people through your ecosystem to get to the places that are going to get them. And that can always be an offer, right? It's like, hey, if you want to be sure to hear about the next class, jump on my email list. That's where I do the most talking about what's happening. It can just be a very easy, heartfelt thing, but just think about, where you need to be making those connections to sort of, like Mark was saying, to just keep that bridge smooth, then people can keep going. And it's amazing how much of a difference that'll make.
Can I make one more comment about I know we're running out of time, but about sales
Yep.
mentions and how many to do? So here's a funny thing about us humans. We write down decisions that we make, but we don't track decisions that we need to make. right? So if we are considering something, we don't write that down in the calendar, need to decide. It's like if we're going to go out to lunch, I'll write it down once we're decided. But if we're still trying to figure out where and when, nothing's written down. And so I have to remember. So when you send out sales emails or sales mentions of an offer, you're supporting someone through a decision-making process. And every time they see it, the decision comes back up and they go, oh yeah, I was going to make a decision about that. And so that's why we send out multiples of them, because they're not all going to get read. And people who are interested actually want support in going through that decision-making process.
Yes. Lori, we just got a big thought from you.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll send out a little comment on the replay about that, and so everybody will have a little bit of a bonus, little bonus something to take away. So thank you for contributing, and I don't want to lose that. I did want to thank Mark for coming and spending this hour with us. Thank you so much. I wanted to let you all know that you can get his book at heartcenteredbusiness.com or wherever you get your books. I wanted to go ahead. Yes.
Heartofbusiness.com is our website. Heartcenteredbusinessbook.com is the book website.
I literally just wrote that down. So thank you.
Heartofbusiness.com is the easiest. You can just go there. And
heartcenteredbusinessbook.com, or just Google Mark Silver and Heart of Business. It's going to get you there. I have a Groove Kitchen group coaching program that's going to be starting on November 15th. I bumped the date back a couple weeks for those of you that are keeping track. I'll send out more about that with the replay. And thank you all again for coming and contributing to the conversation. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you again, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you, Bridgette. So delighted with your presence in the world. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you. All right. All right, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Peace.
Thank you.